Chaos has exploded across Britain after a stunning twist no one saw coming. In a dramatic late-night ruling, the UK Supreme Court, yes, the highest legal authority in the nation, delivered a decision so explosive, so unprecedented, that it sent shockwaves through every corner of Westminster. A £124,000 scandal, a Prime Minister under fire, and a judicial order that has left the entire country speechless. What happened inside that courtroom? And why is every news outlet scrambling to catch up? Stay with me, because what unfolded just moments ago is nothing short of historic. The nation was already on edge, but everything changed when the Supreme Court released a ruling that felt like a political earthquake. The judgment, wrapped in secrecy until the very last second, finally hit the public, sparking instant outrage, confusion and disbelief. According to this dramatic ruling, the court declared that the Prime Minister's involvement in a mysterious £124,000 financial dispute had reached a point where, in this fictional universe, the government's integrity could no longer be maintained. And in one sentence, one single chilling line, the court ordered him to step aside. Not next week, not tomorrow, immediately. The moment the ruling became public, Westminster froze. Ministers who were confidently walking into the chamber suddenly stopped mid-step. Advisors rushed into back rooms with phones pressed to their ears. The tension was so thick that even long-time political insiders whispered that they had never seen anything like it. This was no ordinary scandal. This was a direct confrontation between the highest court in the land and the highest office in government. And the timing made it even more shocking. Just minutes earlier, rumours had already been circulating about missing documents, unexplained transactions, and a growing web of contradictions that seemed impossible to ignore. But no one expected the court to strike this hard, this fast. Across the country, people were glued to their screens as breaking banners flashed relentlessly. Social media exploded with theories, reactions, and disbelief. Some claimed it was a calculated political move. Others argued it was a long overdue reckoning. Yet everyone agreed on one thing: the speed of the ruling was unlike anything in recent memory. A wave of uncertainty swept through the nation as the press struggled to understand how the £124,000 scandal had escalated to such a dramatic conclusion, and why the court felt compelled to intervene so forcefully. Inside Downing Street, the atmosphere was even more chaotic. Staff members were seen rushing through hallways, carrying files and making frantic calls. Eyewitnesses described the building as a storm with no centre, where nobody seemed to know what the next hour would bring. Every door was shut, every meeting was behind closed walls, and yet whispers still leaked out, whispers suggesting that this wasn't merely a financial issue, it was something deeper, something that had been simmering beneath the surface far longer than anyone realised. Something that finally boiled over in front of the highest judges in the land. But the true shock came from the tone of the ruling itself. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't diplomatic, it was sharp, direct, and unshakable. It stated, again in this fictional storyline, that the Prime Minister's position was no longer tenable and that continued leadership would undermine public trust in the government. These words struck the political world like thunder. Commentators gasped as they read them aloud on live television. Even seasoned analysts admitted they had no idea how such a powerful decision could unfold with so little warning. By the time the dust began to settle, one thing was clear: Britain had entered a new chapter. A chapter filled with uncertainty, anger, and questions that nobody seemed able to answer. What exactly triggered the court's dramatic intervention? What evidence did they see behind closed doors? And how deep does this £124,000 scandal truly go? This is just the beginning. As the shock of the ruling spread, the real storm began brewing behind the scenes. What the public didn't know, what even most MPs didn't know, was that this £124,000 scandal had been quietly growing inside confidential reports for weeks. In private chambers, investigators had pieced together inconsistencies that raised serious concerns. At first, it looked like a simple oversight, a minor accounting issue that could be handled internally. But soon, a pattern emerged. The numbers didn't match, the dates didn't align, and each time someone tried to explain the missing details, the answers only produced more questions. By the time the case reached the Supreme Court in this fictional universe, the judges were already troubled by the gaps they had uncovered. Within political circles, whispers turned into panic. Several senior officials, who once stood proudly beside the Prime Minister, suddenly vanished from public view. Some cancelled appearances without explanation. Others refused to comment, knowing that one wrong word could connect them to the growing controversy. The silence itself became suspicious. Journalists began digging, chasing leads deep into government offices and old financial records. Every new discovery painted a darker picture, and the pressure on the court intensified. It was no longer just about money, it was about credibility, transparency, and the stability of the government itself. Inside Parliament, tensions hit breaking point. MPs gathered in clusters, speaking in hushed tones as if they feared the walls could listen. Statements were delayed, debates postponed, and meetings dissolved in confusion. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with fear, uncertainty, and the sense that something massive had been hidden from the public for far too long. Political rivals smelled opportunity, while supporters were left scrambling for an explanation that never came. Even loyal backbenchers, normally eager to defend the Prime Minister, looked uneasy. Every hour brought a new rumour, and every rumour seemed more serious than the last. Meanwhile, in Downing Street, the Prime Minister faced a nightmare no leader ever expects. Advisers rushed in and out of the office, each carrying updates that only made the situation worse. Some urged him to fight the ruling, others begged him to comply, but the truth was clear. The momentum of the crisis was now unstoppable. The court's language had left no room for negotiation. The scandal had crossed a line, and any attempt to resist could risk plunging the entire government into a deeper constitutional crisis. Still, inside those walls, debates raged for hours, each side believing their approach was the only way to save the administration from collapse. As night fell, the media turned the story into a national obsession. Talk shows erupted with speculation. Analysts dissected every angle. Commentators argued over the meaning of the court's words, trying to predict what would happen next. The public waited anxiously, refreshing their screens for updates, hoping for clarity, but receiving nothing but more confusion. The questions grew louder. Why £124,000? What did the court see that forced them to act so aggressively? And why now, when the country was already wrestling with other political battles? Every unanswered question fed the growing sense of crisis. Behind closed doors, newly uncovered documents were being reviewed for the final time. In this fictional storyline, these files reportedly revealed transactions that contradicted earlier statements made by the Prime Minister's team. Some entries appeared incomplete, others suspiciously altered. Whether these inconsistencies were deliberate or accidental remained uncertain, but the timing alone was enough to ignite suspicion. For the judges, it wasn't about proving guilt. It was about protecting the integrity of governance. And when they found that the missing £124,000 connected to several unresolved reports, they reached the conclusion that stunned the entire country. But the most dramatic part of this unfolding saga was yet to come. The ruling wasn't the end. It was the spark. The real consequences were beginning to form in the shadows, preparing to reshape the political landscape in a way no one could have predicted. Allies were turning into critics, rivals were sharpening their words, and the Prime Minister was facing the most critical decision of his life: comply with the ruling, or plunge the UK into a constitutional showdown that could change everything. As the crisis deepened, the atmosphere across the nation shifted from shock to sheer disbelief. The Prime Minister had not yet responded to the Supreme Court's ruling, and that silence became the loudest sound in British politics. Every minute that passed without a statement only intensified the sense of chaos. Reporters surrounded Downing Street, waiting for even the smallest sign of movement. Police tightened security around the building, forming barriers, as if preparing for a historic moment. Crowds gathered outside, confused and angry, demanding answers that nobody had yet provided. The tension was unbearable, and people could feel that something monumental was about to happen. Inside the government, the pressure reached breaking point. Cabinet ministers found themselves split into two camps. those who urged immediate resignation to prevent further damage, and those who insisted the ruling must be challenged to defend the office of Prime Minister. Their confrontation behind closed doors grew so heated that officials described it as one of the most explosive meetings in modern political history. Voices were raised, tempers flared, and accusations flew across the room. Every minister knew that whatever decision was made would shape the future of the country and possibly end several political careers at once. As the debate raged on, more information began surfacing about the £124,000 scandal. In this fictional storyline, internal memos revealed that concerns had been raised months earlier, but the warnings had been buried beneath other political priorities. Staff who tried to escalate the issue claimed their reports were ignored or redirected. Others hinted that the financial trail might connect to decisions made far earlier than the public realised. These revelations, though still incomplete, painted a picture of a government struggling to maintain order behind a curtain of confusion. The media seized on every detail, amplifying the crisis to a level that felt completely out of control. Backbench MPs, usually the quietly loyal voices in Parliament, started distancing themselves from the Prime Minister. Some made late-night calls to party officials, expressing fear that supporting him any longer would be political suicide. Others warned that ignoring the court's ruling would set a dangerous precedent and risk plunging the country into constitutional chaos. The party's foundations began to crack, and alliances that had held firm for years suddenly faltered. Even MPs who had never questioned their loyalty now whispered doubts in corridors, wondering if the government could even survive the week. Meanwhile, the opposition sensed an opportunity unlike anything they had seen in decades. Their leaders prepared statements, sharpened arguments, and readied themselves for the political storm. They accused the Prime Minister of losing control, of allowing the scandal to spiral us into a national crisis, and of hiding crucial information from the public. Their messaging spread rapidly, fueling the growing distrust among voters. Calls for accountability grew louder, and the opposition demanded an emergency session of Parliament, insisting that the nation deserved immediate clarity on the government's future. Outside, protests began forming in several major cities. Hundreds of people gathered with signs, chanting for transparency and demanding the Prime Minister step down. The country was split. Some argued that the court had overstepped its authority, while others believed the ruling was necessary to protect the integrity of the government. The public anger rose with every hour that passed without a clear decision. Social media ignited into a firestorm of debate, with trending hashtags calling for resignation, accountability, and answers. The pressure was reaching a point where something had to give. But inside Downing Street, one final discussion was taking place. A discussion that would determine the next chapter of this unfolding crisis. Advisors stood around the Prime Minister's desk, presenting the last pieces of information, the last options, and the last warnings. If he resigned now, he could leave with some dignity and perhaps save his party from total collapse. But if he resisted, the confrontation with the court could escalate into a constitutional showdown that the nation had never experienced before. The weight of the moment settled heavily across the room. Everyone knew that the next decision would be watched by millions and remembered for generations. And then, just as the country held its breath, news leaked from inside the building. A decision had finally been made, but the world didn't know what it was. Not yet. The tension reached a boiling point as the clock ticked past midnight. The nation waited with bated breath for the Prime Minister's response to the Supreme Court's shocking order. Inside the walls of power, decisions were being finalised, alliances tested, and futures rewritten. The £124,000 scandal had evolved from a mysterious financial controversy into a battle for the very soul of the government, and now everything hung on a single choice. In the end, the Prime Minister stepped forward to address the nation. His voice was steady but heavy with the weight of the moment. Without denying the court's authority, he admitted that mistakes had been made, errors in judgment that could not be ignored. He announced his immediate resignation, acknowledging that the trust of the people and the stability of the government had been compromised. The declaration sent shockwaves through Parliament and across the UK. For supporters, it was a painful moment of loss. For opponents, a moment of vindication. But this resignation was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a new, turbulent chapter in British politics. Questions flooded in from every direction. How deep did the scandal really go? Who else would be implicated? Could the government recover from such a dramatic upheaval? And most importantly, who would step up to lead a nation now fractured by scandal and distrust? The opposition wasted no time calling for a swift general election. They promised transparency, reform and a fresh start. Meanwhile, within the ruling party, factions jockeyed for power, each trying to position themselves as the saviour who could rebuild trust and stability. The political landscape was thrown into chaos as former allies became rivals and long-standing loyalties were tested to their limits. Across the country, ordinary citizens followed the unfolding drama with a mix of hope and frustration. Many demanded answers, accountability and change. Some feared the instability would damage the nation's future. Others believed that only through this upheaval could the government be cleansed of corruption and deception. The media continued its relentless coverage, dissecting every detail and predicting every possible outcome, keeping the nation hooked on the unfolding saga. At the centre of it all was the legacy of the £124,000 scandal, a reminder that power is fragile and that even the highest offices are not above scrutiny. The Supreme Court's decision, fictional though it may be in this story, became a symbol of accountability and the enduring strength of democratic institutions. It showed that when those in power stray from truth and trust, the system can still hold them to account. Now, as Britain faces an uncertain future, one thing is clear: the political landscape has been forever changed. The fallout from this scandal will be felt for years to come. And the question on everyone's mind remains: who will rise from the ashes to lead the nation forward? This fictional drama may be a story for now, but its echoes remind us all that justice and truth must always prevail, no matter the cost.